last 5 questions here. So this one says, what are some ways the Bible-believing Christians have been influenced by how the world views the family?
Well, one thing that's kind of upsetting is that young ladies are being taught to, forego marriage and guiding the house and raising children to get a college degree, go and work in a corporation, and they think that that's better when actually it's not. It's actually worse for the ladies, and unfortunately, a result of that is fewer children are being born. Women are not liking their job, not liking their position as being in a job. When it's time to have children, they can't do it anymore because they've been in work for 30 years and their body is not as healthy as it used to be, and so you have 40, 50-year-old women that have just foregone having children for a job, and then now they're just kind of broken because of it. So that's a way that even Christian women are influenced by the world to forsake guiding the house and raising children for money and getting paid.
So in summary, I would say every aspect of the family unit is under attack. But to maybe the question of in the Christian or the Baptist church, how has the secular worldview entered into our churches that it would be like faith? And I would say in the husband-wife equal relationship, it's 50-50 versus what true submission and authority looks like. That's a big one. The number of children, kind of a question we had this morning is, when are you ready? Well, when you get married, that's the purpose of marriage. So that's another one. Career, working outside the home. And you'll see in the Christian home today, typically the husband works, the wife works, the kids go to a Christian school, and there's only 1 or 2 children, not because that's all God gave or physically that's all they could have, but because that's their priority. And so that description of the independent fundamental Baptist nuclear family unit is unfortunately pretty much copy and paste in most churches. And so what you see here, we encourage large families, as many as God will give, to homeschool. Not even the Christian school we believe is biblical. And that pattern in and of itself is contrast to what you would find in most good churches. And so that's where I would say they've influenced us the most.
Well, that's a good point, because the next question is, what is your view on Christian schools versus homeschooling?
I'll jump in first. That's all right. Christian school, I do not believe is biblical. I think it starts off with a genuine concern, because you're going to have families that don't fit the biblical pattern because of sin, whether a divorce or something happens and that family unit is broken. And so the church is attempting to fix create a solution for that individual family. But by doing that, they also encourage and believe that all children should be part of that Christian school. And the church was never tasked with that. If somebody wanted to create a private school to help broken homes, that would be a ministry or a business they would do on their own. Never should it be a Christian school. And the only reason you should be sending your kid to a Christian school is because your family unit is broken and you cannot follow the biblical pattern. And so never do I see an example or occasion in Scripture where God everything we do at our church, everything, we have a biblical pattern. We just sang hymns because the Bible tells us to sing hymns. We gather together because God tells us to not forsake the assembling of ourselves together. We send out missionaries because during the question and answer, they were sent out 2 by 2. We still do that today. Everything in our church we pattern after Scripture, but there's zero pattern of a Christian school. Why is that the only exception to not needing a pattern? And so I would even argue that if it's taking 90% of your church resources, 90% of your facilities, 90% of the staff, and you have 0 verses, I think it's probably not supposed to be there.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I'm against Christian school. I think that in the world, they think, okay, we need to send children off to learn from somebody else, not their parents, and that's a worldly thing. But they slap on Christian and they say, well, Christians ought to do the same thing when we get our, marching orders from the Bible and from the Lord, where we train our children. We are responsible for their education and how they are brought up in the Lord. And so Christian school it's just the world trying to pretend to meet a need that they created when really the parents are there to fulfill that need and train and teach their children. So, yeah.
So next question, what should a wife's biblical submission look like day to day?
So I've mentioned it as in an analogy of, you have a business where there's a CEO and then there's managers that work for the CEO, and then there are other individuals that work for the manager. And so there's kind of this hierarchy where, the husband, he's in charge, and anything that is taking place in his household, it's his fault or, his credit that's taking place. But there are people that are below a CEO. In the case of a family, the wife, she, works for the Lord, but she's under authority under the head of the household, and she manages, the children. She manages the house, the things that go on under that. And if if the CEO makes a decision, hey, we're going to go here, we're going to church here, we're going to live here, well, the manager or the wife is going to say, okay, well, I'll help you do that. I'll help make sure that that's what how to get all the kids organized, get the house organized. I'll help you do that. And so I see submission of a wife as being, a helper for her husband. Sometimes he'll be wrong, but a godly wife, she's going to, help him and support him to serve God even better. And so,
yeah, I think that's a good example. The word submission itself means submit, means I don't agree or I don't understand, but it's not my position. Think of it in the workforce, since you use CEO, a good employee, even though the boss is having you do it the hard way, that's what they want. Even though there's a more efficient way, he's paying. Now, we're not commanded in Scripture to submit without any reservation to our employer. We would quit the job. But if we're going to work for that employer and he wants us to do it this way, but I can think of 10 other ways to do it way better, he's the one paying me. I'm going to do it his way, even though I'm not in agreement with it. But if I do it with the wrong attitude, I'm not going to get a promotion, I'm not going to get a raise, and I'm probably going to get replaced, right? So in a workforce, you can see those that submit to authority when maybe it's not the greatest way to do it, but it's his business. That's how he wants it. I'm going to do it that way. You would make a great employee. That employer would say, wow, hey, I appreciate that even when I'm wrong, you do what I ask. It would be the same in a home. The wife is not going to give an account to God for how that home is run. The husband will. The wife will give an account for how she submitted when he was right and wrong. And so don't sit there. We all have those employees who think they should be the boss. You're not. And it's not your business to run. And if he wants you to run it that way, you say, well, hey, that's what he wants. And they quit their job and they go off and get a worse job because that employer doesn't know how to run it. Just go do what he's asked you to do, clock in, follow the orders, and you'll make a great employee. Same thing when it comes to the home. Just follow your husband and make him the best husband you can be by not causing that undue flack in every decision that's made. And so the submission would look like, not that there's not opinion, not that there's not discussion, but when the decision is made, even if you don't agree, you aren't going to be portraying that look of disgust. You're not going to be, I told him so. I mean, that's not submission. That is a forced obedience. And so I would say biblical submission would be a supporting wife who maybe has voiced her concern, but the husband said, no, this is what we're doing. Well, then I'm going to be the best in enacting that, even though I may not personally think that's the way it should be done.
So what are some things you wish you knew before getting married or having kids?
So I just have a personal issue with repeating myself, and I'm still working on that. So I wish someone had told me how many times I would have to repeat myself with the children. So anybody who's not aware of that will become a thing, or if it's not a thing already, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I'm still working on it. Okay, I'm trying. Okay, but when I have to say the same thing multiple times, it's hard. But I wish someone had told me, hey, you're having a son. Great. Okay. Hey, just know that you're going to have to repeat yourself. That would have been nice to know. So I'd be prepared for it. But yeah, that's about it.
So I don't really have many that I could think of. I can come up with one, but I don't. My life was a little different than most. I grew up in a family-centered home. My mom was a stay-at-home wife. I was homeschooled. I never went to school. I grew up in that church setting where the Christian school was pushed, but we rebelled against that and, just no, we're going to do our own thing. And so I was married very young, and with in mind, I want to find a wife who loves the Lord, and we're going to bear children, and we're going to homeschool. And so I don't have regrets because I wasn't filled with bad information. I was given good information. If I could come up with one to satisfy that answer, I would say this. They say children grow up fast, right? That's a cliche statement. But I would say to the young parents, not to discourage you, we want to encourage you to have children, but the child rearing years are hard years. And changing diapers and formula or whatever it is, not sleeping through the night, not that it's not worth it, and I would have as many children as God would give me if I could do it over again, but to understand that while they do grow up fast, 4 years into it, they still can't dress themselves and write their name. 4 years is a long time not sleeping through the night, and you got other ones coming in the ranks. It feels almost overwhelming. It feels like you're never going to get out of this tunnel, but they do grow up. And so I would give an admonition to the younger me is it's going to be tough, but it's part of this investment part of life that you're going to be changing diapers. I think Mark just got out of diapers last week. I'm teasing, but it was a big day in our family when we no longer had to buy diapers, and that was probably, Mark is 13, so probably 11 years ago, 11 years ago or whatever, somewhere around there, 10 years ago, we've been married 23 years, going on 24, so over half our marriage has been changing diapers and spit up and toys, and while it goes fast, for a young parent, it doesn't. And so I would encourage you, hang on. It's going to wear you out. Don't get frazzled. It will happen quick. You will be looking back thinking, wow, it did go fast. But in the process, it doesn't.
All right, last question here. What standards or rules did you or will you set for your kids who are dating or talking to someone?
So none of my children are dating and talking to anyone right now.
Yeah.
It's probably coming soon, so that's a good question. I will say that I want to make sure that whether it's my eldest son or that probably would be him. Honestly, I haven't really thought about it just yet, but I'm thinking maybe I would want him to include me in pretty much every single decision about who she is, who he thinks that she is, and I'd love to set up some standards where he's not like always just connected to her, because that's just temptation to just want to be always with her, always on the phone, maybe always texting. So I definitely would put a cut into that, maybe have some phone texting curfew or something like that. I don't know. Anytime they go out, they have to be chaperoned, probably with one of their siblings or with me or my wife. They have to be in church, they need to be in church, not acting like they're married, but you could talk to whomever you want at the church. So in the church, you're just talking. Again, I haven't sat down with him because it hasn't really happened just yet, but those are some of the things I think about. I think those are pretty good standards.
So for most families like ours, it's water and oil for the first. For the oldest, because nobody wants to be the first to talk to the girl or to the guy. And I in my teenage years for my children, I let them know, especially the older ones who never talk to girls. They, the girls are on this side, the guys are on this side of the room. It was never because I told them to. It's just girls have cooties back then, and the girls are over there like, I wish a guy would talk to me, and the guys are like, ew, yuck, I don't want to talk to girls, right? So when they turned 18 is when I had that talk with them, and I said, if you like a girl in our church or one of our friends in other churches, I'm okay with that. You are now old enough to express interest in that. That wasn't an unlimited card of whoever you. It's just now, hey, if there's someone in your mind, and there, the conversation was like, "You, Dad, no, I know," but you are now at that stage where I will allow you to consider that, and if you want that, great. Well, that started the wheels turning in the older ones, and of course, I've got 2 married and one just got engaged, and they started thinking, and then I had to, as the dating stage started, help them understand that dating is not engagement. And we don't believe in dating around just to play with people's emotions, but if at any point in the dating stage you don't feel right, you don't need a legitimate reason to just stop talking to them. There's no pressure, there's no commitment, there's no promise that has been made, it's not being disloyal to that individual. You just say, I want to take a break, I need to do so. And some of my children had to do that, and there are people who are trying to make you feel bad because you led the girl on, and no, you thought you were interested, you found out you weren't, you walked away. That doesn't make them a bad girl, and that doesn't make you a bad guy. 2 good people just didn't, we tried, it didn't work. Okay, great, wish you best. So if you can help people understand the dating process, the restrictions or the expectations are not that of an engagement, okay? And then the other thing I had to clarify was, just because you're hanging out in church, that's not dating. So it's okay if you're in a church or a camp setting like this. If you're playing a co-ed game, that doesn't mean, and you're always find yourself next to the same young lady because you're potentially interested in her or she's interested in you. That's not dating. That is 100% allowed. We encourage that. People say, well, then what's the difference of dating? Well, here's where dating would be different. Dating now has a sit down with both parents. What are your rules? What are my rules? And then we will allow things that are outside of the church, like a phone call. My kids are not allowed to call the opposite gender ever. Okay, so if we wanted to do that, that would be a dating privilege. And we would set the rules, whether it's 1 hour a day or a certain time frame or until a certain time at night. And we did set those, and they would advance as they were okay and they proved themselves good. We would, allow them to have those phone calls. They could go over to that one's house. That one could come over to our house, always chaperoned. But that would be dating. So we had to let our children know, just because you hang out in church doesn't mean you're dating, and you don't feel pressured into thinking that it's okay. And what I'm finding is the oldest ones have charted the way, and then the younger ones are now not so taboo on that subject, and it's now tangible to them. So I would say, when it comes to the dating side, let your children know what your expectations are, maybe even before they're at that age. Because the danger is, if you never tell your children that it's obtainable, they're going to feel like, especially ladies, they're going to feel like, I'm going to die an old maid because mom and dad are never going to let me marry. No, sit down and let them know what it's going to look like. Hey, at 18, I'm going to let you start talking. And at 20 or whatever age, my age is 20, I'll allow you to marry. And when those days come and you find a guy you're interested in or a girl you're interested in, I'll sit down and I'll give you regulations and we'll walk through that, and it'll progressively get more and more liberty until you have a ring on that finger, and then you're free to do whatever you want. So I would say give them something tangible so they know what parameters to work in, that they don't have to sneak and feel like the only way they can ever have a relationship is if they sneak around your back, or they feel bad because they're attracted to the opposite gender. Like I'm doing something wrong. No, that's 100% good. And this is how it's going to look. This is what that path looks like. And so we're glad you're interested in a girl, or we're glad you're interested in a boy. And at 18, I'm going to allow you to take that formal step. At 20, we're going to let you get married, and so forth there. So I think more information is good, and lay that out. And I didn't have those answers when my children were your children's age, because I was just like, we'll address it. But after I've just come through those with some, and those are the boundaries we've set, and they seem to work.
All right, that's all the questions.
All right. Well, thank you, Pastor Boyle. Yeah. Very, very good questions.